Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Ted Cooks. Today I'm making something very simple, very easy, but very tasty. I grew up calling this dish fried potatoes. You may know it as hash browns, you may know it as home fries, but at the end of the day, it's all fried potatoes. It's only a handful of ingredients, so you see I have my potatoes, I got some onions, and some butter. For my seasonings, I have some cayenne pepper, some onion powder, paprika, salt, pepper, and some garlic powder. I like to use a cast iron pan for this. I feel like that gives me the best results in terms of crisping and browning my potatoes. So get your potatoes rinsed and peeled, and you want to cut them into thin rounds like so. Try and make them as uniform and even as possible. That really adds to the texture of this dish. Now once you get your cast iron pan nice and hot, you want to throw you a good bit of butter in there and make sure you get a nice even coating. Now look how I'm putting my potatoes in the pan. I'm layering them one by one. I want that first layer to make really good contact with that cast iron pan. That's going to make them nice and brown and crisp and add a lot of texture and flavor to this dish. The top layer is going to steam because we're covering this with a lid, and they're going to become nice and tender and soft. So we're getting two separate textures in this one dish. Now don't judge me, I do not have a lid for this pan. I used a little aluminum foil, but that did me justice. Now I know you've seen 1,000 people cut 1,000 onions, but you're going to see it again because I like the way it looks on camera. But what I'm doing here is making sure that everything is the same size. That ensures that everything cooks at the same rate. You don't want any raw pockets of onions in this dish. So once your onion is diced, you want to check on your potatoes. You should start seeing some browning in that pan. So you want to get everything mixed at this point because you don't want that brown to turn to burnt. So once you give everything a nice little mix, you want to start adding in your onions and your seasonings. So I come with my onions, and then I come behind that with some kosher salt. Then I add some coarse ground black pepper. I come behind that with some onion powder. And then I come behind that with some garlic powder. Now I add a little bit of paprika, and that's mostly for color. And then I hit it with some cayenne pepper. That's going to give it a little heat on the back end and kick that dish up right to the next level. Now nothing caramelizes onions better than butter, so you want to add a couple little pieces of butter here to get those onions nice and caramelized and really add a lot of flavor to this dish. At this point, you want to make sure that everything is nice and incorporated. So you can use a spatula, but why use a spatula when you can sexily flip those potatoes in a pan like a professional chef? I mean, look how those potatoes are cascading upon one another as they get to know each other in that pan with those seasonings and butter, making a lot of delicious flavor. Now, I was hype here because I normally spill when I do this, but I actually did a really good job and I wanted y'all to see that. I just covered it back up and let it go for a little bit. Keep checking on them until everything is tender to the fork, and they should be done at that point. Now I had some eggs in the fridge, so I said, you know what, I'm gonna show you guys how I make some eggs too. So I get my eggs cracked and into a bowl, and I got a little bit of a shell in there, but that's okay. It gave me an opportunity to show you that you can use an old eggshell to get shells out of your bowl. It's a lot easier than using your fingers. So once I get the shell out, I grab my whisk and get those eggs nice and whipped. Now I get a low heat going on under my pan. I cook my eggs on a low heat because I don't want them to scorch or burn, and it makes them come out nice and creamy in consistency. So once I get a nice heat going on in my pan, I throw in a couple pieces of butter. Yeah, I know, more butter, but look, I never said that this dish was healthy. I only said that it tasted good. Now I don't want that butter to brown or burn because that adds a different color and flavor than you want in your eggs. So once my butter is just melted, I switch that butter around, make sure I get the edges in the middle, and I throw my eggs into the pan. Now I gotta keep my eggs moving, and that's important because eggs will stick and burn and they will scorch, and that is not a flavor you want in your scrambled eggs. So make sure you get the sides as well as the middle because you don't want those eggs to sit. You gotta move them, and the thicker they get, the quicker you gotta move them. Now I know you've seen the Gordon Ramsay video where he takes the eggs on the heat, off the heat, on the heat, off the heat, creme fraiche, green egg. That's not something I'm gonna do here. What I like to do is I cook them nice and slow, and I keep them moving very fast, making sure I get the sides and middle as well. So once everything starts to come together, I like to add a little bit of cheese in mine as well. I don't have creme fraiche. What I have is good old American cheese. So I throw a couple slices of American cheese in there. So there's one, get that mixed in, and here comes another piece and a quarter because I ate a piece, and then I get that all mixed together. Now, I thought that my pan was hot enough to carry my eggs up to the consistency that I wanted, but it wasn't. So what I did was I added my seasonings, I added some salt, and I added some pepper. And after I put my seasonings in the pan, I kicked my heat back on just a little bit because I wanted to bring those eggs up and make them a little thicker. They were a little loose for my taste. You can absolutely eat them here if you want, but I like mine a little bit thicker. So I turned that heat up and I got those eggs right up to the consistency that I wanted them to be at. Now at this point, there's nothing left to do but to plate it up. Nothing fancy. I put potatoes on the plate. I put the eggs right next to it. I put a little green onions on top of the eggs because I like the way it looked. And that's it. Let's eat.